Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now let's begin. Lucas Gentry first noticed something wrong on a Tuesday morning when his daughter Emma refused her cereal. Not with words. She hadn't used those in 17 days, but with a slow, deliberate shake of her head that made his chest tighten. Her eyes, once bright and full of mischief, had become hollow things that tracked movement without really seeing. He'd married Jody White 6 years ago, shortly after Emma was born. Back then, Lucas had been clean for 2 years, working as a consultant for a security firm, his past buried under layers of manufactured credentials and a carefully constructed backstory. Jody had been a kindergarten teacher, warm and attentive, or so he'd thought. Her mother, Darlene, had seemed like the typical overbearing grandmother, always stopping by unannounced, always offering unsolicited advice about child-rearing. The silence had started 3 weeks ago, the day after Jody's younger brother Derek Skinner moved into their basement. Derek was a piece of work, unemployed, angry at the world, with the kind of entitled sneer that made Lucas's fingers itch for solutions he'd promised himself he'd never use again. Jody had insisted. Family helps family, she'd said. Lucas had taken Emma to 3 different doctors. Dr. Patricia Chun at Children's Memorial had run every test imaginable. Blood work, neurological exams, hearing tests, psychological evaluations. Nothing. Physically, Emma was perfect. Psychologically, the doctors spoke in careful terms about selective mutism, trauma responses, adjustment disorders. Has anything changed at home? Dr. Chun had asked during the last visit. Lucas had looked at Emma, who'd gripped his hand tighter. My brother-in-law moved in recently. Sometimes changes in household dynamics can trigger stress responses in children, Dr. Chun had said, but her eyes had held a question Lucas couldn't yet answer. The house felt different now. Lucas worked from home 3 days a week, handling risk assessment reports for corporate clients. Legitimate work, boring work, the kind that kept him far from the man he used to be. But he'd noticed things. The way Jody's phone calls with her mother would cut short when he entered a room. How Derek would smirk at Emma when he thought Lucas wasn't looking. The locked door of the guest bathroom, where Darlene would take Emma for quality grandmother time. On the 18th day of silence, Lucas had picked the bathroom lock after Darlene left. He'd found nothing except a faint smell of cigarette smoke, which was odd because Darlene claimed she'd quit years ago. In the trash, buried under tissues, a single cigarette but with Darlene's lipstick shade on the filter. That night, Lucas sat in Emma's room long after she'd fallen asleep. His daughter, barely 7 years old, whimpered in her dreams. He'd built this life to escape violence, to be the father he'd never had. Somewhere in his past, buried in a storage unit 3 states away, were 6 phones with untraceable numbers, for passports with different names, and enough documentation to prove he'd died 12 years ago. Lucas Gentry had been born Frederick Petty in Detroit, the son of a low-level enforcer for the Cipriani family. He learned early that violence was currency, that loyalty was purchased, and that the right leverage could topple empires. By 25, he'd been the family's primary fixer, not a soldier, but something more valuable. He made problems disappear without bullets. He destroyed lies with paperwork, manufactured evidence, exploited weaknesses. He'd gotten good enough that other families borrowed him. Good enough that when he wanted out, they'd let him go because dead men couldn't betray secrets. He'd met Jody at a coffee shop in Portland, 1,000 miles from his old life. She'd seemed perfect, uncomplicated, kind, normal. Everything he wasn't. He'd proposed after 6 months, desperate for redemption through ordinariness. Now, watching his daughter sleep fitfully, Lucas wondered if he'd been running from himself so hard that he'd failed to see what was right in front of him. The breakthrough came on day 21. Lucas had pretended to leave for a client meeting, instead parking 3 blocks away and doubling back through the neighbor's yard. He'd entered through the basement window, a security flaw he'd intentionally never fixed, and positioned himself in the crawl space above the main floor where old ventilation grates provided sight lines into every room. He waited for 2 hours before Darlene arrived. "Where's that useless husband of yours?" Darlene's voice drifted up from the kitchen. "Client meeting in Seattle. Won't be back until tomorrow." Jody's tone was light, conspiratorial. "Good. The girl needs proper discipline. You've been too soft on her. Through the grate, Lucas watched Jody lift Emma onto the kitchen counter. His daughter's face was blank, resigned. Derek emerged from the basement, holding something Lucas couldn't quite see. She was talking back again this morning, Jody said, asking for her daddy. Spoiled little brat, Darlene muttered. She pulled a pack of cigarettes from her purse, lit one. You know what we discussed? Lucas's blood turned to ice as Darlene approached Emma with a lit cigarette. His daughter didn't flinch, didn't cry out, just closed her eyes and gritted her teeth. This is for your own good, Jody said, holding Emma's arm steady. Children need to learn respect. The cigarette touched Emma's ribs. Lucas bit down on his fist to keep from screaming, forced himself to watch, to document, to remember every detail. Emma's jaw trembled, but she made no sound. Derek laughed from the doorway. 14 now, Darlene said, examining her work. An even number. That's better. They let Emma down. She walked to her room like a ghost, while the three adults sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee, discussing whether they needed to correct Emma's behavior more frequently to break her stubbornness. Lucas waited until they'd left, Darlene first, then Derek heading out for his daily drinking session at McGill's bar. He dropped from the crawl space, went to Emma's room. She was curled on her bed, shaking. Emma, he whispered, kneeling beside her. Sweetheart, it's Daddy. Her eyes opened, filled with tears she'd learned not to shed. I need you to be brave for me. Can you be brave? A small nod. Can you show me where it hurts? She hesitated, then slowly lifted her pink t-shirt. Lucas's vision blurred red. 14 circular burns, some fresh and angry, others scarred over. A pattern of deliberate torture spanning weeks, maybe months. They'd been careful, placing them where clothing would hide the damage, where a doctor's casual examination might miss them. Why didn't you tell me? His voice cracked. Emma's lips moved. The first words in 3 weeks emerged as a terrified whisper. Daddy, Grandma said if I tell, she'll bury me in the backyard. Mommy said you believe them and not me. That you'd help. Lucas pulled his daughter close, felt her small body trembling against his chest. Rage like he'd never known, not in Detroit, not in the dark years, consumed him. But underneath the rage was clarity. Perfect, crystalline clarity. Listen to me very carefully, he said softly. I will always believe you. I will always protect you. And nobody will ever hurt you again. Do you understand? Another nod against his shoulder. I need you to trust me for a few more days. Can you do that? Will you make them go away? Lucas thought about the man he used to be, the capabilities he'd buried, the connections that never truly severed. Yes, sweetheart, I'm going to make them go away. After Emma fell into an exhausted sleep, Lucas went to his office and locked the door. From behind a false panel in his desk, he retrieved a burner phone he'd kept for a decade, promising himself he'd never use it. He dialed a number he'd memorized but never forgotten. Midnight services, a woman's voice answered. Verification code, Omega 77 Echo Romeo. Petty, Frederick. A pause. That name was retired. Unretiring it for 24 hours. I need a full workup. 3 targets, 1 location, complete background on everyone in their circle. Also need a medical examiner I can trust, a discreet photographer, and a courier package delivered to my location by morning. This will cost. Bill it to the Cipriani account. Authorization code Victor Tango 9. They still owe me. Another pause, longer this time. Confirmed. The account is still active with substantial credit. Send the target details. Lucas typed out names, addresses, everything he had on Jody, Darlene, and Derek. Then he made a second call, this one to a lawyer he'd once helped acquire a very specific set of documents that had made a very specific prosecution disappear. Matthew Christian, the voice answered warily. It's petty. Jesus Christ. You're supposed to be dead, I know. I need a favor. The kind you can't refuse. I don't do that work anymore. You do now. I need divorce papers drafted, custody papers, restraining orders, all ready to file by end of business tomorrow. Also need CPS documentation prepared, and I need you to have a team ready to document evidence. Evidence of what? Child abuse, torture, Against my daughter. The line went quiet. Matthew Christian had 3 daughters of his own. Send me everything, Matthew said finally. This one's pro bono. Lucas worked through the night. The courier arrived at 4 a.m. with a package containing items he'd thought he'd never touch again. Specialized cameras, audio equipment, fingerprint collection kits, and a small handgun he immediately locked away. He wouldn't need it. Violence was the amateur solution. Lucas Gentry destroyed lives with precision. When Jody woke up that morning, Lucas was making breakfast, acting as if nothing had changed. "You're back early," she said, eyeing him with suspicion. "Meeting got canceled. I figured I'd spend the day with my girls. Emma has plans with my mother today." "Actually," Lucas said calmly, "I thought Emma and I could have some daddy-daughter time. It's been a while." Jody's expression hardened. "She's going to my mother's." Lucas set down the spatula, turned to face his wife fully. For the first time in 6 years, he let her see a glimpse of Frederick Petty behind Lucas Gentry's mild facade. "No," he said softly. "She isn't." Something in his tone made Jody step back. "Lucas, call your mother. Tell her to come over. Tell Derek too. Family meeting. 1 hour. You can't just..." Lucas pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph he'd taken the previous day through the ventilation grate. Darlene, holding a lit cigarette. Emma, face twisted in silent agony. Jody, holding their daughter's arm steady. The color drained from Jody's face. "Where did you?" 1 hour, Lucas repeated. "Or I walked to the police station with this and 9 other photos. Your choice." She made the calls. They arrived separately, but within minutes of each other, as if they planned it. Darlene came through the front door without knocking, Derek slinking in behind her, reeking of last night's whiskey. Jody sat at the dining table, hands clasped, eyes darting between Lucas and her family. "What's this about?" Darlene demanded. "I don't appreciate being summoned." "Sit down," Lucas said. The command in his voice, the voice he'd used in Detroit warehouses and New York backrooms, made even Derek pause. They sat. Lucas placed a folder on the table. "I'm going to tell you a story. You're going to listen. Then I'm going to explain what happens next." "We don't have to listen to anything," Jody started. Lucas opened the folder. Inside were photographs, medical documentation, and a single sheet of paper covered in cramped handwriting. "This is Emma's testimony. She wrote it last night, with my help. Describes every time you hurt her, every cigarette burn, every threat, every time you told her I wouldn't believe her, that I'd help you hurt her if she told." Darlene's face reddened. "That child is a liar. She's manipulative, just like her father apparently. The burns on her body tell a different story. So do these." Lucas pulled out the photos. Crime scene quality, properly lit, time-stamped, showing every mark on Emma's small body. Derek leaned back, trying to appear unconcerned. "So what? You go to the cops? Kid probably hurt herself for attention." "That's option 1, Lucas agreed. "I go to the police. Jody goes to prison for felony child abuse. Darlene, you're looking at aggravated assault on a minor, child endangerment. Derek, you're an accessory at minimum, possibly more depending on what else I find. You'd all be registered offenders. Lives over." "You wouldn't," Jody said. "The scandal would hurt Emma. Emma's hurt enough, and she'd survive the scandal. You wouldn't. But here's the thing. I don't want to put Emma through a trial. I don't want her having to testify, relive this, become a case number in the system." Darlene sneered. "So what do you want? Money? You think you can blackmail us?" Lucas smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "No, Darlene. I'm going to give you all a choice. Option 1, as I said, is police. Option 2 is different." He pulled out 3 envelopes from the folder. Inside each envelope are documents. "Jody, yours contains divorce papers I'll file tomorrow. No fault, but I get full custody and you get supervised visitation contingent on completed therapy and anger management. You accept these terms, sign, and tomorrow you move out. I'll give you the house in Spokane that's in my name only, a one-time payment of $50,000, and you disappear from Emma's in my life except for court-ordered supervised visits. You resist, and I pursue criminal charges." Jody stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "Derek," Lucas continued, "your envelope contains a one-way bus ticket to Houston, $5,000 in cash, and a letter of recommendation for a job at a warehouse owned by an associate of mine. You take the money, take the job, and you never contact anyone in this family again. You refuse, and I send a different set of photos to the Portland police. Photos of you buying cocaine from Trevor May's outside McGill's bar last Wednesday. That's a parole violation, isn't it? 3 to 5 years. Derek's face went white. How the fuck? Darlene, Lucas said, turning to his mother-in-law. Your envelope is special. He slid it across the table. Darlene opened it with shaking hands, pulled out a single photograph. Her face went from red to ashen in seconds. That's you, 1987, outside a clinic in Reno. Medical records attached show you gave up a baby girl for adoption. Her name is Cara Lutz now. She's been trying to find you for 15 years. Darlene's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Here's your choice, Lucas said quietly. You sign a confession admitting to abusing Emma. I keep it sealed. You move to Reno. I have an apartment arranged, 6 months paid, and you meet your daughter. She's a social worker, ironically. Good person. She'll probably forgive you for abandoning her. But if you ever contact Emma, Jody, or me again, I release the confession to the police, and I tell Cara exactly what kind of monster her birth mother really is. Or, option 2, I release everything now. You go to prison, and Cara finds out her mother is a child abuser who went to jail. This is insane, Darlene whispered. You can't. I can. I have. And if any of you think I'm bluffing, I want you to think very carefully about how I got all this information in less than 12 hours. Think about the resources that takes. The connections. Then ask yourselves, who is Lucas Gentry really? The question hung in the air. Jody was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Derek looked like he might bolt. Darlene seemed to have aged 10 years in as many minutes. You have until 6 p.m. tonight to decide, Lucas said. Sign the papers, accept my terms, or I make one phone call, and this all becomes very public and very legal. Emma and I are going to spend the day at the aquarium. When we come back, I want you gone, one way or another. He stood, collected the folders, and walked to Emma's room. His daughter was already dressed, a small backpack on her shoulders. Is it over, Daddy? She whispered. Not yet, sweetheart, but soon. As they left through the front door, Lucas heard Jody's voice rising in panic, Darlene's sharp retort, Derek's angry cursing. He'd set the board perfectly. Now he just had to wait. The aquarium was Emma's favorite place. Lucas bought her an overpriced stuffed jellyfish in the gift shop, and they spent 3 hours watching the sharks circle in the giant tank. Emma didn't talk much, but she held his hand the entire time, and once she smiled. Daddy, she said as they sat eating ice cream in the food court. Are they really going away? Yes. All of them. All of them. What they come back? Lucas looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She'd always had his eyes, dark and observant, but now they held a hardness that no 7-year-old should possess. The hardness of someone who'd learned that the people who were supposed to love you could be monsters. If they come back, Lucas said carefully, I'll make sure they can't hurt you. That's a promise. Like, how you made them come to the house today. Lucas hesitated. How much truth could a child handle? How much did she already know? Emma, do you know what I do for work? You work on computers. Risk assessment. That's what I do now. But before you were born, I did something different. I helped people solve very complicated problems. Sometimes those problems were bad people who needed to go away. Emma considered this, licking her ice cream thoughtfully. Are Mommy and Grandma bad people? The question was so direct, so innocent, that Lucas felt his heart crack. What they did to you was very bad. People who hurt children are bad. But sometimes bad people can change, if they have the right reasons. Do you think they'll change? I don't know, but I know they won't hurt you again. They arrived home at 5:47 p.m. The house was empty except for 3 signed documents on the dining table and 3 envelopes. Unopened, their contents accepted. Jody's keys sat beside her papers. Derek's basement room was cleared out. Darlene's envelope had a note attached in her cramped handwriting. You win. But Lucas knew it wasn't over. People like Darlene didn't surrender. They retreated, regrouped, and returned. He'd given them an out, but he hadn't broken them. Not yet. That night, after Emma fell asleep clutching her jellyfish, Lucas made another call on the burner phone. "Status?" he asked. "All 3 targets accepted terms," the woman from Midnight Services reported. The brother departed on the 7 p.m. bus to Houston. The wife checked into the Marriott downtown. The mother. A pause. The mother withdrew $10,000 from her bank account this afternoon and met with someone interesting. Lucas's blood chilled. Who? Robert Duncan. Private investigator, former cop, specializes in dirt digging and custody cases. They met for 2 hours. "We have audio if you want it." "Send it." 3 minutes later, Lucas's secure email pinged. He opened the audio file, listened to Darlene's voice, distorted but clear. "Doesn't matter what he has on me. I need everything on him. Every secret, every lie. There has to be something we can use. I know men like him. They're always hiding something big." Robert Duncan's gravelly voice responded. "This kind of deep dive doesn't come cheap. I don't care about the money. I want my granddaughter back, and I want that son of a bitch destroyed. Can you do it or not? Give me a week." Lucas deleted the file, his mind already 3 moves ahead. Darlene was going to dig into his past. She'd find Frederick Petty eventually. The name change was legal, but traceable if you knew where to look. And once she found Frederick Petty, she'd find the Detroit years, the families he'd worked for, the violence he'd orchestrated. She'd weaponize it. Custody battle, claiming he was a dangerous criminal. She'd have enough truth mixed with exaggeration to make him look like a monster. Even if he won in court, the scandal would follow Emma forever. Option 1, police and courts, was no longer viable. Darlene had just forced his hand. Lucas opened his laptop, accessed an encrypted server he hadn't touched in 12 years, and began to work. If Darlene wanted to find Frederick Petty, he'd give her Frederick Petty, but not the real story. By 3 a.m., Lucas had created a masterpiece of misdirection. Using old contacts and a network of favors owed, he planted a new narrative in the deep archives that any investigator would eventually find. Frederick Petty, witness protection, testified against the Cipriani family in 2013, given new identity, and relocated. The documents looked authentic because they were. Lucas had created them using legitimate DOJ templates he'd acquired years ago for an entirely different purpose. The story would satisfy Darlene's investigator. Petty was a snitch, a coward who betrayed his family. Not dangerous, just pathetic. The court would see someone who'd cooperated with authorities, not a criminal. It was perfect cover. But Lucas knew the real Ciprianis would hear about this eventually. They'd know the witness protection story was bullshit. They'd wonder why Frederick Petty's name was surfacing after 12 years of silence. That was a problem for later. Right now, he needed to ensure Emma was safe, and that meant ensuring Darlene and Jody couldn't weaponize his past. The next 2 weeks moved like clockwork. Matthew Christian filed the divorce papers. Jody didn't contest. She'd signed the agreement. After all, Derek sent one drunken text from Houston, "You'll pay for this," which Lucas ignored. Darlene, according to Midnight Services surveillance, met with Robert Duncan 3 more times. Emma started talking again. Not a lot, but enough. She'd whisper goodnight, ask for specific foods, occasionally laugh at cartoons. Dr. Chun called it remarkable progress. Lucas knew it was just the absence of terror. On day 16, Robert Duncan delivered his report to Darlene. Lucas knew because he'd paid one of Duncan's assistants, a young woman named Christy Joyce who had gambling debts and flexible morals, to copy everything. The report was thorough. Duncan had traced Lucas Gentry back to Frederick Petty, found the planted witness protection documents, interviewed 3 sources who confirmed Petty had testified against the Ciprianis. He'd even found a sealed court record, also planted by Lucas, showing a 2013 deposition. Subject presents as low threat, Duncan had concluded. History suggests cooperation with authorities, not violence. Recommend using criminal history to argue instability and unsuitability for full custody. Darlene took the bait. On day 19, Lucas received a letter from a lawyer named Enrique Hoover, representing Darlene White in a petition for grandparents' rights and emergency custody based on new information regarding the father's criminal past and potential danger to the minor child. Lucas read the petition twice, then smiled. Darlene had done exactly what he'd expected. She'd filed for emergency custody, claiming Lucas was Frederick Petty, known associate of organized crime, present danger to Emma, unstable and violent. The petition was scheduled for a hearing in 3 days. Darlene thought she'd won. She'd exposed Lucas's secret, weaponized it, and now she'd get her granddaughter back to properly discipline. She had no idea what was coming. Lucas made 3 phone calls. First to Matthew Christian, who laughed when he heard Darlene's strategy. She just made this too easy. Second to Dr. Chun, who agreed to testify about Emma's injuries and the timeline of her selective mutism. Third to a number he'd been saving. A detective named Marcy Kelly, who owed him a favor from 8 years ago when Lucas had provided information that had closed a cold case and saved her career. "I need you to be in court on Thursday," Lucas said. "I need you to testify about an ongoing investigation." "What investigation?" "The one you're about to open into child abuse. I'm sending you a file. Open it, read it, and tell me if you think there's probable cause." He sent the complete documentation, photos, medical records, Emma's written testimony, audio from the hidden cameras he'd installed that had captured Jody and Darlene discussing discipline techniques, and financial records showing Darlene had purchased cigarettes every week despite claiming to have quit. Marcy Kelly called back 20 minutes later. "This is... Jesus Christ, Lucas. This is horrific. Is it enough?" "It's enough for arrest warrants." "How fast do you need them?" "Thursday morning, before the custody hearing." "You're playing a dangerous game." "I'm protecting my daughter." "There's nothing dangerous about that." Thursday morning arrived cold and clear. The courthouse steps were empty except for news crews. Someone had tipped them off about a custody battle involving organized crime connections. Lucas suspected Darlene, trying to publicly pressure him. Inside, courtroom 4 was packed. Darlene sat with Enrique Hoover, looking confident. Jody was there too, sitting separately but clearly aligned with her mother. Derek had even flown back from Houston, probably promised money to testify against Lucas. Judge Victoria Steele entered, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a reputation for cutting through bullshit. "We're here on an emergency petition for custody modification and grandparents' rights," she began. "Mr. Hoover, you filed this. Present your case." Hoover stood, all theatrical outrage. "Your Honor, we've uncovered deeply troubling information about the father, Lucas Gentry, real name Frederick Petty. Mr. Petty is a former associate of the Cipriani crime family in Detroit. He changed his identity, hid his past from his wife, and has created an unstable environment for his daughter. We have documentation proving his criminal connections and believe the child is in immediate danger." He presented Duncan's report, the planted witness protection documents, even a grainy photo of a young Frederick Petty shaking hands with Vincent Cipriani from 20 years ago. Judge Steele examined the materials. "Mr. Christian, your response?" Matthew Christian stood slowly. "Your Honor, we don't contest that Lucas Gentry was formerly Frederick Petty. However, the characterization of his past is deliberately misleading. Mr. Petty cooperated with federal authorities, testified against organized crime, and has lived a completely lawful life for over a decade. His past, while complicated, is irrelevant to his fitness as a parent." "Irrelevant?" Hoover sputtered. "He's a criminal. He's a witness who helped prosecute criminals," Christian corrected. "But more importantly, this entire petition is a smokescreen. The real danger to Emma Gentry isn't her father. It's the petitioner herself." Christian pulled out his own folder. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence of systematic child abuse perpetrated by Darlene White, enabled by Jody Gentry, over a period of at least 3 months." The courtroom erupted. Hoover objected. Darlene stood up, shouting denials. Judge Steele's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order. Mr. Christian, this is highly irregular." "Your Honor, I have medical documentation, photographic evidence, and witness testimony. I also have Detective Marcy Kelly from the Portland Police Department who can speak to an ongoing criminal investigation." Judge Steele's expression shifted from irritation to concern. "Detective Kelly is here." Marcy Kelly stood from the back of the courtroom, badge displayed. "Yes, Your Honor." I opened an investigation into child abuse allegations against Darlene White and Jody Gentry 72 hours ago. Based on the evidence, I obtained arrest warrants this morning. Darlene's face went from confident to terrified in seconds. This is a setup. He orchestrated this. Ma'am, I need you to remain calm, Kelly said, moving forward with two uniformed officers. Judge Steele held up a hand. Detective, before any arrests in my courtroom, I want to see this evidence. Mr. Christian, approach. Christian handed over the complete file. Judge Steele spent 10 minutes reviewing it, her expression growing darker with each page. When she looked up, her eyes found Darlene with cold fury. Ms. White, these photographs show 14 cigarette burns on a 7-year-old child. The medical examiner dates them over a span of 3 months. Do you have any explanation for this? She's lying. Children lie. That man, Darlene pointed at Lucas. He's manipulating everyone. He's dangerous. The photographs don't lie, Judge Steele said coldly. Neither does the audio recording I'm listening to of you and your daughter discussing burning this child as punishment for talking back. Jody tried to bolt for the door. The uniformed officers blocked her path. Mrs. Gentry, sit down, Judge Steele ordered. Detective Kelly, I'm suspending these proceedings. You may execute your warrants. What happened next would be replayed on Portland News for weeks. Darlene White and Jody Gentry, arrested in open court for felony child abuse. Derek Skinner, arrested as an accessory for failing to report and for providing material support. All three let out in handcuffs while cameras flashed. Lucas sat quietly through it all, Emma beside him. His daughter watched her mother and grandmother being arrested with an expression that broke Lucas's heart. Not satisfaction, but sadness. The complicated grief of a child who'd loved people who'd hurt her. Judge Steele cleared the courtroom of everyone except Lucas, Emma, Christian, and herself. Mr. Gentry, she said quietly. Or should I call you Mr. Petty? Lucas is fine, Your Honor. I don't know what you did to make this happen, and frankly, I don't want to know. But I'm granting you full custody. Jody Gentry's rights are suspended pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. Darlene White has no contact rights whatsoever. Derek Skinner is banned from any interaction with a minor child. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me. Protect that little girl. And Lucas. She looked at him with eyes that saw too much. Whatever you were, whatever you did in your past, use it to be the father she deserves. Understand? Yes, Your Honor. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Jody pleaded guilty to felony child abuse and got 8 years with possibility of parole after 4. Derek got 2 years for accessory charges. Darlene, who refused to plead and insisted it was all a conspiracy orchestrated by Lucas, went to trial and got 12 years. The news media had a field day with the cigarette burn case. They tried to dig into Lucas's past, but the witness protection story held. A few reporters found sources claiming Frederick Petty had been a mob enforcer, but those stories died quickly, shut down, Lucas suspected, by people in Detroit who preferred the old days stayed buried. Cara Lutz, the daughter Darlene had given up for adoption, showed up at Lucas's door 6 weeks after the trial. She was 34, earnest, and devastated by what she'd learned about her birth mother. I don't know why I'm here, Cara said over coffee. I needed to see Emma, to know she's okay. She's seeing a therapist twice a week. She's back in school. She smiles sometimes. Can I meet her? Lucas considered. Emma needed positive female influences. Cara seemed genuine. Maybe. Slowly. Let me talk to her therapist first. Cara became a regular presence in their lives. Not a replacement mother. Emma wasn't ready for that, but an aunt figure who brought gentleness and patience. She was a social worker, after all, specialized in trauma. 3 months after the trial, Lucas received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single photograph of Vincent Cipriani Jr., current head of the Cipriani family, standing outside a restaurant in Detroit. On the back, one word in Vincent's handwriting, even. Lucas understood. The Ciprianis had heard about Frederick Petty's name surfacing about the witness protection story. They'd investigated and figured out it was bullshit. But they'd also seen what Lucas had done to protect his daughter. The precision, the ruthlessness, the complete destruction of his enemies using legal and illegal means. Vincent was sending a message: your debt is paid. The old days are forgotten. But don't come back. Lucas burned the photograph. He had no intention of going back. Frederick Petty was dead and buried. Lucas Gentry had won a different kind of war. 6 months after the trial, Emma spoke full sentences regularly. She made friends at school, joined a soccer team, even laughed at Lucas's terrible dad jokes. The burns would scar, physically and emotionally, but Dr. Chun was optimistic about her long-term recovery. She's resilient, Dr. Chin told Lucas during a checkup. Trauma like this doesn't just disappear, but with support and stability, children can heal remarkably well. Lucas knew better than most that scars didn't disappear, but they could become part of a story with a better ending. One evening, Emma sat at the kitchen table doing homework while Lucas made dinner. Kara had joined them. It was becoming a weekly tradition. "Daddy," Emma said without looking up from her math worksheet. "Yeah, sweetheart. What happened to the bad people?" Lucas exchanged a glance with Kara, who subtly nodded. They discussed this possibility with Dr. Chun. "They're in jail," Lucas said carefully. "They're being punished for what they did. Will they get out? Not for a long time. And even if they do, they can't come near you. There are laws that protect you." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, "Kara says you used to do dangerous things. Before I was born." Lucas froze. "What else did Kara say?" Kara raised her hands defensively. She asked, "I said you'd tell her when she was ready." Emma looked up at him with those dark, too knowing eyes. "Were you a bad person?" The question every parent fears, amplified by truth that couldn't be fully hidden. Lucas sat down across from his daughter. "I did things I'm not proud of," he said honestly. "I worked for bad people and helped them do bad things. I thought that was all I could be. But then I decided to change. I became Lucas Gentry because I wanted to be better. And then you were born, and I knew I had to be better. For you. But you still used the bad things to stop Mommy and Grandma. Too smart. She was too smart. Yes. I used knowledge from my old life to protect you. Sometimes the skills we develop for wrong reasons can be used for right reasons. Is that okay?" "I don't know," Lucas admitted. "But I'd do it again. Because protecting you is more important than anything else." Emma considered this, then returned to her math homework. "Okay. Just like that. Okay." The acceptance of a child who'd seen darkness and decided that her father's light, complicated as it was enough. Kara smiled at Lucas over Emma's head. It was going to be okay. Not perfect, not unmarked by the past, but okay. That night, after Emma went to bed, Lucas sat in his office and systematically destroyed the last remnants of Frederick Petty. He burned the burner phones, shredded the false documents, wiped the encrypted servers. He kept only one thing: a photograph of himself at 25, standing in a Detroit warehouse, young and cold and certain that violence was the only answer. He kept it to remember who he'd been, to remember why he could never go back. Lucas Gentry locked the photograph in a safe, turned off the lights, and went to check on his daughter. Emma slept peacefully, the stuffed jellyfish clutched to her chest, nightmares held at bay by the knowledge that her father, whatever he'd been, whatever he'd done, would burn the world down before letting anyone hurt her again. And in that moment, Lucas understood something fundamental. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about using everything you were, good and bad, light and dark, to protect what mattered most. He'd been a fixer, an enforcer, a ghost. Now he was a father, and that was enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.